Let me give you a list of coaches, and tell me what they all have in common. Carlo Ancelotti, Luis Enrique, Didier Deschamps, Xabi Alonso. Between these four men, you have 15 Champions League titles, 4 World Cups, a combined century of managing the best clubs and national teams in the history of football. These are not ordinary coaches. These are the gold standard of the profession. And every single one of them has faced exactly the same problem when Kylian Mbappé is in their squad. How do you build a collective around a player who is structurally almost impossible to integrate into a collective? This isn't about Mbappé's quality. He's 27 years old and has already scored 42 goals in a single club season. Nobody is questioning his talent. This is about the pattern. The same conversation, the same friction, the same tactical compromise, repeated by every manager who has had him. And at the 2026 World Cup, with Didier Deschamps' last tournament as France's coach, that pattern is about to run again. Here is the core of the problem. Kylian Mbappé is the greatest individual attacking talent of his generation. That sentence is not debatable. His goal-scoring record at PSG, for consecutive seasons of 25 or more goals, was built in a system specifically designed to give him the ball in space on the left and let him do whatever he wanted with it. When he had the ball and a defender to beat, almost nothing in world football could stop him. But modern elite football, at the Champions League level, at World Cup level, in the highest pressure knockout environments, is not built around one player with a defender to beat. Is built around collective movement, defensive contribution, positional discipline, and the capacity of every individual to subordinate their natural game to the system's demands. Luis Enrique was explicit about it. In the 2023-24 season, Mbappé scored a hat-trick against Reims. A hat-trick. And Enrique's response was not celebration. He stood in front of the cameras and said, "I am not happy with Kylian Mbappé. He can help the team in another way." 3 goals. Not good enough. That sentence tells you everything about what this story is really about. Because the question going into the 2026 World Cup is not whether Mbappé is brilliant. He is brilliant. The question is whether brilliant is sufficient, or whether it has always been, in the most high-pressure moments, part of the problem. To understand why this pattern keeps repeating, you need to understand the era of football that Mbappé plays in. The modern pressing game, built on the principles of Bielsa, developed by Klopp, refined by Guardiola, and now adopted as standard across elite football, demands that every player presses, tracks back, contributes defensively, and functions as a unit. There are no exceptions. Not for the strikers. Not for the wingers. Not for anyone. The data supports this. The most successful teams in Champions League history over the last decade have all been built on collective defensive intensity. Liverpool's 2019 Champions League winning side ran more high-intensity pressing sequences per 90 minutes than any previous Champions League winner. PSG under Luis Enrique won the Champions League in 2025, but only after Mbappé had left. That detail is not an accident. It is the argument. Because what Mbappé was trained to do, what he is instinctively brilliant at, was developed in a different era of PSG football. The Neymar Messi era. The €222 million era. The era when PSG built the team around the individual stars and hoped the sum of the parts would be greater than the whole. It was never greater than the whole. PSG never won the Champions League while Mbappé was there. And every coach since has been trying to solve the same equation. How do you have Mbappé without being defined by Mbappé's limitations? Kylian Mbappé was born in Bondy, northeast Paris, on December 20, 1998. His father Wilfred was a football coach. His mother Faiza had been a handball player at a high level. Football was not just his passion, it was the language of the household from the day he was born. He joined AS Bondy aged 6. His father coached him. And from the beginning, the reports from those years say the same thing. He didn't just want to score. He wanted to be the one who decided the game. At 13, he visited Arsenal's academy and trained with them for a week. Arsenal offered him a place. He declined. At 14, Real Madrid came calling. His family chose to wait. In 2015, aged 16, he made his professional debut for Monaco, the youngest player to represent the club in a competitive match. And in the 2016-17 season, he announced himself to the world with one of the most extraordinary breakthrough campaigns in European football history. 15 goals and 11 assists in Ligue 1, 6 goals in the Champions League knockout rounds, helping Monaco reach the semi-finals. He was 18 years old. PSG paid €180 million for him the following summer. At 19, he became the second most expensive player in the history of football. Here is the detail that matters. At Monaco, Mbappé played in a team. He pressed. He tracked back. He worked within Leonardo Jardine's system. In that system, with that discipline and that collective effort, Monaco finished second in League One the previous season and reached the Champions League semi-finals. Then he went to PSG. At PSG, the team was built around the stars. The system bent to accommodate Mbappé, Neymar, Cavani, and later Messi. Defensive work was not the priority. Collective pressing was an afterthought. And Mbappé, week after week, season after season, learned to operate in an environment where the team existed to serve the player rather than the other way around. That PSG experience, 6 seasons, over 200 goals, shaped him in ways that every coach who inherited him has since had to manage. Not his talent, his habits. And habits at this level are almost impossible to break. The case for Mbappé being, in pure individual terms, one of the greatest players of his generation is not complicated. In the 2022 World Cup final against Argentina, he scored a hat-trick. 1 goal, a pause, then 2 goals in the final 3 minutes of normal time to drag France back from 3-1 down and force extra time. 3 goals in a World Cup final, becoming only the second player in history to achieve that, after Geoff Hurst of England in 1966. France lost on penalties, but Mbappé's performance was one of the truly great individual World Cup final displays the tournament has ever produced. He won the Golden Boot with 8 goals in 7 matches. In the 2024-25 La Liga season, his first full season at Real Madrid under Carlo Ancelotti, he finished as the club's top scorer with 31 league goals, 44 goals across all competitions. In a season where Real Madrid won no major trophy and suffered for El Clasico defeats, Mbappé was, as one report put it, the only bright spot. And under Xabi Alonso in 2025-26, the individual numbers have been extraordinary. 42 goals across all competitions. Top scorer in La Liga. A player who, when given space and freedom, still operates at a level that very few players in the history of the game have matched. But then tense the arguments come in, and they always do. Because Ancelotti's Real Madrid, in the 2024-25 season, was knocked out of the Champions League in the quarterfinals. They lost 0-4 to Barcelona. They lost 0-4 to PSG. And in the Liverpool game, Anfield, November 2024, the biggest European test of the season, Mbappé missed a penalty, contributed almost nothing from open play, and Liverpool won 2-0. After that Liverpool game, Ancelotti was clear. Mbappé's problem is the problem that we all have. He was deflecting, protecting his player. But the statement contained a truth he didn't quite say out loud. The team cannot function as a collective when its most important player functions as an individual. And the Luis Enrique moment is the one that defines this argument most precisely. In that 2023-24 PSG season, Mbappé was in his final year at the club. The contract dispute was public. His future was known. And Luis Enrique, a coach who had revolutionized Barcelona, who had won the Champions League, who understood exactly what collective football looks like at the highest level, tried to integrate Mbappé into a pressing system. In his own words, Mbappé explained what happened. The first month, I wasn't there, I was in the loft. So I came back and I said to myself, I have the sword of Damocles over me. At any moment they're going to cut my head off. The result? PSG reached the Champions League semifinals with Mbappé and lost 0-1 over 2 legs to Borussia Dortmund. Then, without Mbappé, under the same coach with the same system, PSG won the Champions League. The data is the argument. Luis Enrique built a system that couldn't fully accommodate Mbappé. When Mbappé left, the system worked. But here is where the argument becomes more complex. And I want to be honest about this. Mbappé at Real Madrid, under Xabi Alonso, has not been a problem. 42 goals. Positive public relationship with his coach. Real Madrid have been competitive, even if they haven't won the Champions League. The individual numbers suggest a player operating at career-high level. So the question is, has Alonso solved the problem that Ancelotti and Luis Enrique couldn't? The honest answer is partially. And the data tells you why the word partially matters. Alonso has been clear about what he wants from Mbappé off the ball. And Mbappé's pressing numbers in La Liga in 2025-26, 12.47 ball pressures per 90 minutes, are slightly higher than the previous season. The direction of travel is right, but the Champions League tells a different story. Real Madrid were knocked out in the quarterfinals again in 2025-26. And the pattern in those games, against teams with organized collective defensive structures, was the same as it has always been. Madrid at their best when they transition quickly, and Mbappé has space. Madrid at their worst when opponents press them high and demand collective intensity in return. The collective question remains unanswered, and that brings us directly to France. At the 2024 Euros in Germany, Mbappé scored one goal, a penalty. France reached the semi-finals without scoring a single goal from open play. They were eliminated by Spain 2-1 in Munich. Mbappé himself described his tournament as a failure. He broke his nose in the first game against Austria. He played most of the tournament in a mask. He was visibly exhausted. He asked Deschamps to substitute him during extra time against Portugal. L'Equipe gave him a 2 out of 10 for that performance, one of the lowest ratings ever awarded to a France player at a major tournament. And the structural question that nobody in the French Federation has fully answered: Deschamps builds France around defensive solidity and collective discipline. Mbappé's best football requires freedom, space, and individual expression. Those two things have never quite reconciled. Not in 2020, not in 2024. The 2026 World Cup is the last chance for this version of France to answer it. Here is the honest resolution. Kylian Mbappé is 27 years old. He will never be more talented than he is right now. His 42-goal season for Real Madrid is the proof that individually he is operating at the absolute peak of what a forward can produce. But the pattern is the pattern. Ancelotti couldn't solve it. Luis Enrique didn't solve it. He resolved it by removing Mbappé from the equation entirely. Xabi Alonso has improved the numbers at the margins, but the Champions League knockout rounds have still exposed the collective question. And Deschamps, in his final tournament, his career-defining last act as France manager, is walking into the 2026 World Cup with a squad that may be the most individually talented group France has ever assembled: Mbappé, Dembélé, Alves, Tchouaméni, Kanté, Doué. On paper, it is extraordinary. On paper, France are one of the 3 or 4 strongest squads at this tournament. But paper football and tournament football are different things. In tournament football, the teams that win are almost always the teams that function best as a unit under maximum pressure. The 2010 Spain team, the 2014 Germany team, the 2024 Spain team. The question is whether France, under this coach, with this player at its center, can be that kind of unit. In 2018, they could, because in 2018, Mbappé was 19 years old, unburdened by expectation, operating in a system that didn't demand everything from him, and the team around him was complete. In every tournament since, the burden has grown heavier, and the pattern has not changed. The last chance to change it starts now. The question at the heart of this story is not whether Mbappé is one of the greatest players of his generation. He is. The question is whether greatness at the individual level automatically produces greatness at the collective level. And the answer, across 4 different managers, 2 clubs, and 3 major tournaments, appears to be not automatically, not structurally, and not without a fundamental shift in how Mbappé understands his own role. He is 27. He has won a World Cup. He has scored a hat-trick in a World Cup final. He has put up 42 goals in a club season. The individual CV is extraordinary. But Luis Enrique's PSG won the Champions League without him. That detail will never disappear from the analysis. The 2026 World Cup is Deschamps' last game as France coach. It is Mbappé's best chance to finally align individual brilliance with collective triumph at the highest level. Whether the pattern finally breaks, I think that question will define how this generation remembers Kylian Mbappé. What do you think? Is Mbappé the reason France win the World Cup, or the reason they fall short? I want to see the debate in the comments.